All right, so many of you have seen the news recently about Iran, and we talked about this story a couple weeks ago before it got even more heated, talking about the attempt by the United States to go to war with Iran. And interestingly enough, this is so much like what we saw in Vietnam with the Gulf of Tonkin incident, now the Gulf of Oman incident. And this is an article we went through last time we talked about this story. We got stuff like this that is coming out in the news a lot lately, like how Iran was swindled out of $3.2 trillion and how much the insane amount of oil in Iran. It's not surprising to any of us that we're seeing a country with a lot of oil get targeted. We see this one sentence here. At stake is the allocation of revenues from the wider Caspian Basin's area, including both onshore and offshore fields, that is conservatively estimated to have around 48 billion barrels of oil and 292 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. And of course that puts a big target on countries, but there's more to it than just oil, and we're going to get into that later. There's so much at stake here. Iran has been a target for years, and we're going to get into more articles right away, but first I want to just talk about the fact that you go back to 1952, 1953, reinstalling the Shah, the coup against Iran, these countless attacks on Iran. They attempt to fund and arm Iraq against Iran, like, the Mujahideen / Al-Qaeda were funded and armed against the Soviets, who were funded and armed against the Germans, who were propped up in the election of Hitler as chancellor, again caused by the U.S. We can't forget about the Lusitania back leading into World War I. The Vietnamese were armed and funded under FDR for their communist nationalist movement. When is this going to end? I mean, you just have this cycle of create problem, come in with reaction, scare people, mislead people, and then come in with a solution, which is more problems. And it's just a never-ending cycle of mass murder. And it saddens me to see people continuously fall for it. But are we falling for it anymore? I don't know. That's a big question here that we need to go into. But of course, a couple weeks ago, this article, May 24th, talked about how the Pentagon will send 1,500 troops along with drones and fighter jets to the Middle East to counter Iran threat. I'm not sure if that's quite a threat, but of course this is in the news a lot. The tanker. It was all over the news recently, and this attempt to claim that Iran is shot a torpedo at some Japanese ship, like we're supposed to actually believe that. Does that not sound a little familiar to the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which we now know was completely fabricated? No, but we're supposed to fall for it this time. This time, it's legit. No. And you could see the holes in the side. We're going to go into this in a moment, but the holes in the side of this boat, clearly not from torpedoes. Anyone that's an expert on, what a hole from a torpedo looks like will say that's not from a torpedo. Anyway, let's go into a few of these stories regarding this incident. U.S. says video shows Iranian military removing mine from tanker. This is a story that's going around a lot. This is some of their so-called evidence. And it's so absurdly ridiculous. U.S. Secretary of State accuses Tehran of lashing out, but Iran denies responsibility. The U.S. military has released video footage which it says shows an Iranian military patrol boat approaching one of two tankers attacked in the Gulf of Oman to support the Trump administration's claims that Iran was responsible. The blurry black and white footage taken from the air shows a small military boat alongside the Japanese-owned Kokuka Courageous and someone standing up on the prow of the boat to remove an object from the tanker's hull. The boat then pulls away from the tanker. U.S. officials were quoted as saying the boat was Iranian Revolutionary Guard patrol boat approaching the tanker after it was attacked on Thursday, and the object removed was an unexploded limpet mine. It was unclear whether it was being alleged the Iranian sailors were detaching the mine in order to remove evidence. Thursday's attacks increased tensions between the U.S. and Iran, which are locked in a standoff after Washington imposed economic sanctions on Tehran in an attempt to force the renegotiation of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. I thought something that stood out that was quite interesting regarding this story was a Facebook post by Greg Palast. And as it says here in this Facebook post, I just re-quoted him. It says, the Iranian boat came to the rescue of the attacked ship. Trump's claim that they were removing mine evidence in broad daylight is a joke. Look out, we are the punchline. The Straits are Iran's lifeline. Without it, Iran dies. No way would they commit economic suicide, nor would Iran sabotage their meeting with Japan's Abe, whom Iran invited to Tehran to help restart negotiations. And if you're going to sneak in to plant or retrieve a mine, as the Israelis can tell you, you use mini subs or Klepper kayaks, not big patrol boats that US satellites can photograph. Iran is a fascist theocracy, but not a stupid fascist theocracy. Does anyone smell Gulf of Tonkin? If you're too young to get that reference, Google it. And that's a very important point to make. I mean, obviously, it's almost parallel with what we saw in Vietnam, which led to this war that countless people died from chemical bombs dropped on children. And reminding me of chemical bombs dropped on children, which the U.S. is definitely the MVP of. It reminds me also of Syria and how people are just not buying that narrative because obviously Tillerson says, we are going to work with Assad and we are no longer going after Assad. And 3 days or 4 days later, for no reason, according to the U.S. military, U.S. government, military-industrial complex, Assad decides to bomb and chemical gas his own people for no reason. For no reason at all. Absolutely zero reason. But, oh, well, the U.S. Government says it, so it must be true. And then a year later, again, the U.S. is like, oh, we're going to leave Assad alone. And like almost to the date, 3 days later, Assad, for absolutely no reason, blows up his own people again with chemical bombs, killing countless people, shooting himself in the foot. There's absolutely no sense behind it. They're like, he's a madman. Well, yeah, you'd have to be like an insane madman when he's trying to sustain his own regime and then for absolutely no reason would just blow up his own people. It's so insanely absurd that anyone would believe this. Now, we see this article here from Zero Hedge. Think media won't help lead U.S. into war with Iran based on false intelligence? Looks like they already are, and this is a great example. I mean, they're making claims that this is what we're seeing. This is what is happening because, whatever happened to questioning the government when the government says something. Haven't we been through enough? The MVP of lying, the MVP of murder, the MVP of pollution, the MVP of theft, the MVP of kidnapping, the government. Why would they lie about something that would benefit them if they were able to succeed in fooling the populace? Why would that happen? Well, for a multitude of reasons. And obviously, we're going to see more of this pushed on us like we saw with Iraq. But the difference between now and with Iraq was that now we have YouTube, now we have Facebook, now we have social medias, now we have independent medias that can reach more people. And anyone can spend 2 seconds looking this up. And if people couldn't really talk with an Iraqi leading into the Iraq war, you can talk to someone in Iran today on the internet in a few seconds. What happened there? What do you see there? Well, they'll tell you. But this is from May 10th. Again, going back. CNBC, the U.S. is sending another warship and more missiles to the Middle East amid Iran tensions. Well, isn't it interesting that this is all, like, it would all seem to be pre-planned. It's like they're piecing together a puzzle perfectly, as we heard in the 7 countries situation with General Wesley Clark years ago. Iran's on that list, that they'll conquer all these countries in a certain amount of years. And I think the only one that's left really right now is Iran. And the U.S. has been trying to overthrow Iran and destroy Iran for decades, putting military bases around Iran, pointing guns at Iran. And then when Iran finally goes, hey, stop it, we're going to do something if you keep poking us, they're like, look, warmongers, they're trying to kill people, they're horrible, they're a dictatorship. It's insane. But again, Iran has denied the claim that they were involved in this attack. They say, this article says, Iran says U.S. has no shred of factual or circumstantial evidence that Tehran attacked oil tankers. And it makes no sense that they would. Why would they? It makes absolutely no sense. They're trying to form an alliance with Japan, and they're just like, oh, we're just going to blow up their ships for no reason. It's so insanely ridiculous. And as this article from CNN says, Trump National Security Team expected to discuss sending more U.S. military force to Middle East in wake of tanker attack. Of course, there was even talk a month ago before this happened that they wanted to send as much as 150,000 troops to the area. So much for non-interventionist president. The president has no say. This is a military-industrial complex, and it's gone on for a very, very long time, folks. And then there's this claim that I just saw on ABC News. Iran attempted to shoot down U.S. drone over tanker attack site in Gulf of Oman. This claim that, on top of that, they tried to shoot down a drone. Where's our evidence? Well, again, the government said so you can't question the government or you're non-patriotic. It continues on and on. I'm not going to go into all these articles because it's long-winded, but it says Iran attempted to shoot down a U.S. drone that was surveilling the attack of two tankers hit in the Gulf of Oman on Thursday morning, U.S. Central Command said. The attempt missed the MQ-9 Reaper by approximately 1 kilometer. The Japanese-owned Kokuka Courageous, along with another tanker, the Front Altair, were damaged by mines that the U.S. said Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had placed on the ship's hulls. You're not going to get away with this, guys, because, hey, look at this. The Japanese company, as this Washington Times article says, the Japanese company says flying object, not Iranian mine, struck tanker in Middle East. And they have been going against the claim that it was Iran. The owner of the ship itself was like, no, this had nothing to do with Iran. The president of the Japanese company, Kokuka Sangyo, the international shipping firm that operated one of the two oil tankers allegedly attacked by Iran's forces Thursday, said Friday their ship was not the target of a strike ordered by Tehran. Company president Yutaka Katada said the damage incurred to the MT Kokuka Courageous oil tanker during its voyage through the Gulf of Oman was caused by a flying object and not a maritime explosive device, based on eyewitness accounts from crew members aboard the vessel at the time of the attack. And I quote, I do not think there was a time bomb or an object attached to the side of the ship, Mr. Katada said. The New York Times first reported Mr. Katada's comments regarding Thursday's attack. Further, the company chief said there was zero possibility that they were torpedoes or mines or any other sea-based munition that caused the damage aboard the MT Kokuka Courageous. His statements come hours after British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt said London has no reason not to believe the American assessment that the MT Kokuka Courageous and the Norwegian-flagged MT Altair were attacked by Iranian forces. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Thursday that Washington had irrefutable evidence of Iranian involvement in the tanker attacks. Well, of course, the British foreign intelligence, which work alongside the U.S. in the whole reign of the military-industrial complex worldwide, this globalist entity destroying countries and killing millions of people, of course they're going to be like, oh, we have no reason not to believe them. Well, I mean, the individuals on the ground, the pawns that are being used as sacrifice for the king and the queen might have a different take on that, guys. We're supposed to believe this lying entity called the state that has killed all these millions of people, and we find out every single time it was based on lies. Every single time. And we think this time might be different. Well, I don't think so. I've seen a lot of evidence lately by people simply going, yeah, this is all complete nonsense. I don't buy this. The people are waking up. The vast majority of people, when stuff like this happens, including with Syria, say, you know what? I think this is a false flag. I think the government does have a reason to benefit from this, and I think they are basically creating order out of chaos. The mainstream person doesn't believe this. When I talk to someone who's like your regular average soccer mom, bring the kids to school, that kind of person, go to work, you talk to them and they're like, yeah, I don't believe that. But the news is like, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, over and over and over again. Believe it, believe it, believe it. If we repeat it enough, you might repeat it with us and, chant the mantra and regurgitate nonsense that you know nothing about as reason to go to war and kill all these people. Soldiers themselves aren't buying it. The individuals, people, aren't buying it. Government is showing itself more and more all the time in the age of information to be an organized crime racket, hell-bent on creating vast subservience throughout all mankind, creating vast chaos and fear in order to use little puppet strings on the people and convince them to give away every single remaining freedom they personally have obtained over the years. It is a really sick world we live in, but people are learning, and that's why we're seeing a vast move of desperation by the state and the mainstream propaganda racket, Edward Bernays type propaganda racket we see in the mainstream media, where they're doing everything possible to stop independent medias from getting the word out about these things. Look at even Julian Assange. There's a guy who's a real journalist. He's sharing information that might be considered illegal to some people, but it's factual. It's the truth. Imagine living in a time where the government's like, yeah, but the truth is not beneficial to us, so people need to go to jail or be killed for sharing that truth. That sounds about right to me, actually. That's the way government acts in all cases. It's like, oh, well, people are exposing horrible criminal acts by us, mass murder, like with Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning, where there's video footage of them blowing up innocent people walking down the streets, and they try to run away, and they got kids, and they blow that up and blow up a van with children in it. And just absolute disgusting chaos and massacring innocent people. And most of these people, in many cases, are under the age of like 16. So horrible. And people are sitting comfortably overseas like, oh yeah, well, they're a threat to our freedom. No, they're not. The biggest threat to your freedom is a state. Nothing is even coming close to a threat to your individual freedom than the state itself. You think Iran has the ability to attack the United States? Why would they do that? They would be blown into nothing. Iraq was armed and funded by the U.S. against Iran, causing one of the bloodiest wars in history. Things are getting peaceful, a bit more peaceful in the Middle East, in that region right now. Iraqi Kurdistan is a great example. And Iran, a lot of people, I mean, obviously there's problems, but those problems come from the state and all that kind of stuff. But the major problems that are facing those countries right now are not the people on the ground who for no reason would attack the U.S. because they won't. It's these foreign forces that are surrounding their country with military and pointing guns at their heads. What do you expect them to do? Not defend themselves? Give themselves up to vast war and chaos so that the monetary system is sustained for a bit longer within the United States and globally through the IMF, all that kind of stuff, or the oil racket is able to sustain itself for a bit longer while governments force crazy regulations and taxes on us saying that it's for our environment, even though the government's biggest polluter in the world. Oh, but someone chemical gas children. So we need to, us, the U.S. government, who chemical gas more children than any government in the world, need to blow up more children to teach them a lesson. It's like, just think of the mental gymnastics it takes to buy this nonsense. It's so sickening, and as long as we continue to perpetuate this problem by believing it, the more death and destruction we'll see, the more people coming back with PTSD, the more people killing themselves, the more... a great example, by the way, I got to bring this up, is when Ron Paul was running for president. Anyone remember that, he got more contributions from active military personnel than all of the other Republican candidates and Obama combined? Anyone remember that? There's a reason for that. And there's a reason why every president during the campaign runs on a non-interventionist platform. It's because it's popular to not blow up children. Imagine that. But then every time they try to sneak it in, Clinton, Bush, Obama dropping more bombs than any president in history, Trump about to beat that record, by the way, But everyone in every case is like, oh, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. So Obama blowing up these children, I was anti-war under Bush, but I'm sure he has a reason. We'll wait and see, or I'm just going to ignore this because I don't know anything about it because the news isn't telling me that. Or, Trump, oh, well, I was anti-war under Bush and Obama, but now it's like, oh, well, Trump has, it's 4D chess. There's something that's happening. It's all good. Just wait and see. Trust the plan, as they say. It's just perpetuation of propaganda and being able to convince the public or fool the public into accepting vast destruction, vast poverty, all apathetically. I remember when Trump said that he was going to pull troops out of the Syrian region, and everyone's like, great. And I'm like, there might be something more to this because the government doesn't do anything that it doesn't personally benefit from. Military-industrial complex, etc. Trump doesn't even have a say over all that. Really, seriously, he doesn't. One person isn't going to be like, well, you're going to do this, and the military-industrial complex is going to be like, oh, yes, I'll do whatever you say, God Emperor Trump. That's not how that works. And then, like a week later, he's like, well, actually, we will keep troops in Syria to protect Israel and to protect the world. His quote exactly, to protect Israel and to protect the world. And CNN, Fox News, no one covers it. Because CNN only covers negative stories about Trump that are nonsense to rile up the Trump support, while Fox News will just toe whatever line he says, other than like Shepard Smith or something like that. And it's so crazy. It's the perfect playing against each other propaganda tactic, and everyone keeps falling for it. I mean, Fox News, CNN clashing against each other, left and right, both wrong, both incredibly wrong, setting you in the wrong direction, misdirecting you. And now they're trying to crack down on YouTube, install mainstream media entirely on YouTube. So when you search things up, almost the only things that you'll find are the mainstream media. Make sure that independent medias are destroyed. They're deleting tens of thousands of accounts, demonetizing tens of thousands of accounts, including our friend Dan Dix at Press for Truth. They're trying to destroy us because they know that we are winning the information war. We are. And they're desperate. They need to perpetuate this system because they know that if the Iraq War happened today, it would be minimal in comparison to what it really was because we have the information at our fingertips and there's no excuses anymore. So anyway, we'll see the mainstream media try to perpetuate this. I'm not sure if it will work. I have a feeling it won't just because of the amount of people that are like, nah, this is an obvious nonsense story. Iran isn't trying to attack us. Obviously, this is the exact same scenario as the Vietnam War, Gulf of Tonkin incident. Just the Gulf of Oman incident, Oman incident or whatever. And why would they shoot themselves in the foot for absolutely no reason? You got to think about that. And I think we will be okay. But for now, we need to push the pressure on the states saying, we do not buy your propaganda nonsense. Iran isn't going to attack us. It's absolutely ridiculous. We must avoid in all areas any conflict with this country to go sacrifice a bunch of children, young kids over there, using young kids from over here as pawns. Why don't these government officials just go out and duel? Go and have duels. It's ridiculous. So anyway, we will continuously cover this subject because it's sickening as it's right on. We're reaching a climax here, and it's really, really dangerous, and we're entering very dangerous territory. We cannot allow it to happen. So we'll continuously cover this subject going forward. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we're so heavily demonetized and censored and shadow banned. It's getting really bad, folks. If everyone just gave $1 single a month to say Patreon or our Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content, we could really get out of this rut that we are currently in as YouTube tries to stifle independent media and prop up the mainstream media. This is really important. This is one of the most important times in independent media history for us to say it's now or never. Let's keep moving forward and let's be that change that we wish to see in the world. Of course, there's also our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if
if you please. And of course, we got events coming up. So make sure to check us out at anarchovegas.com. Anarchovegas.com. Use promo code WAM, that's WAM, for a 10% discount on your tickets. It's on July 19th, 20th, and 21st in, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's anarchovegas.com. Make sure to check us out there and find us on websites like BitTube and Minds, and just try to support independent media, if not myself, any of the other big independent medias out there, to help us continuously bring our message to you free of charge so that we can really change the guard as we move forward into a dramatically polarized, crazy future. Let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. It comes down to you guys. You are the change you wish to see. You guys will help us get through these tough times. So anyway, check out all those links. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.